If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then this, the UK Property Market Stat Show, is for you. My name is Chris Watkin, and each week I'm joined by a special guest. This week it's Toby Phillips. We'll come to Toby in a second. What is this show about? Well, the British are obsessed about the property market, even more about house prices and what's happening in the property market. Let's be honest, we all look on Rightmove when our neighbour puts the house on the market to have a cheeky look at the pictures, but more importantly, look at the price, because there's a direct relationship to what our house is worth. And therefore, when the Sunday Times regularly put out headlines about the property market, we know that the British are obsessed about the property market. The biggest index out there is the Land Registry. And when they publish, they're actually talking about sales that took place 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago. The Halifax and Nationwide are looking at sales that took place 2, 3 months ago. We're looking at sales from last week. We're looking at house prices. We are looking at listings, new homes on the market, price reductions, sales, fall-throughs, net sales. We're looking at the whole property market. And by doing that, you'll know what's happening in the property market and have an unfair advantage over other people who are relying on indices that are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months old. Today, I'm joined by Toby Phillips. This is his first time on the show, so we're welcoming out with kid gloves. Toby, just introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen, the people that don't know you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the invite, and hopefully, you'll go easy on me today. As you say, my name's Toby Phillips. I'm the Group Managing Director for the xPerience Martin & Co. For the Property Franchise Group, Chris.
So you're responsible for guiding and supporting the whole of the Martin & Co network, and then some xPerience brands, which are, let's just go through them.
Certainly. So in no particular order, CJ Hold, which is our Bristol stronghold. We have Parker's running through Berkshire. We then have Ellis & Co in our North London and Kent areas, Country Properties in Hertfordshire, and last but by no means least, an amazing business we have called Mullocks, which is based upon Bishop Stortford, Saffron Walden into the Essex area, Chris.
That's excellent. So you've certainly got your finger on the pulse of what's happening around the UK, and I will certainly be coming to you to pick your brains throughout the whole show.
Fantastic.
Those of you that have not watched the show before, we roughly split it into two. The first half is that we look at the UK property market stats, and we really deep dive, and I'll be asking Toby his thoughts on those. And then the second half of the show focuses on a town or a city. Now, the town itself that we're looking at this week is Ipswich. Now, we've been to Ipswich before, but as I said, we always like to revisit and see how things have changed. So a big shout out to everyone in Ipswich there. Now, what I would say is this. If you're not from Ipswich, you might turn off from that section of the show, and that's entirely up to you. But what I would say to you is this, is the software that we are going to be using for this particular show is a piece of software which I think, and everyone says this, game changer, but this really is the Bobby Dazzler, the Mutt's Nuts, the Puppies Privates of software, because as estate agents, you will be suffering from estate agents who overvalue, cheap fees, always reduce their prices. And it's been really hard to prove that you're a better estate agent. Well, the software that we're going to be using today is a piece of software that you can use as well. Now, you could say, well, that sounds like a bit of a sales pitch, Chris. Well, to be honest with you, it is a sales pitch, but I'm not being paid to mention or sell the product. But it really is. The product, I will mention what the product is when we get to that part of the show. But it really is game-changing stuff. And if you really know how to analyze it, you can see where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and there's independent third-party data which proves that you are a better estate agent, so you can counteract the overvaluing and the cheap fees. But more of that later. Okay, so this week, as I said, we're looking at week 36. Can you believe it's 36 weeks we're in? And that is Monday, the 2nd of September, all the way through to include Sunday, the 8th of September. We're going to be looking, as I said, lots of data. So shall we dive in, Toby?
Absolutely. Can't wait, Chris.
So here we go. First time round. Let's be gentle with him, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. So you should be able to see a graph on the screen now. Just check that, Toby. Is that okay?
Yep, all clear, Chris.
Good stuff. That's what we like to hear. So what we normally do now, Toby, is this. I just spend a minute rattling through the stats of each topic. So we'll start with listings, and then I will come to you and get your thoughts on this. So in terms of the listings, we are on 1.266 million properties year to date, which is 7.8% ahead of 2023's year to date figure and 7.4% ahead of the average from 2017, 18 and 19, which are more, if there is such a thing, normal years. And we are that's where we are with that. In terms of where we are in terms of the plotting the stats, we listed as a country 38,000. I'm getting ahead of myself here. 38,562 properties. And just to make you aware, last week it was 29,000, so we've had an uplift of around 25%. And the average price of a property coming on the market is 482,000. So the white line on the graph here is the 2024 figure, and we're comparing it with the normal years of 17, 18, 19, and 2023. And as you can see here, that we've had a massive uplift in what's happening to listings compared to last week. And if you can see from that, Toby, very, very similar to other bank holiday weekends that took place. Yeah. And interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, all of these dips here. So again, the UK property market is extremely predictable. We take off in January, we level out a bit, nothing's happening in Jan and Feb and March, and then we always have 3 dips. 1 is for Easter and 2 are for the bank holidays. So those are your dips, and then we tail off as we go throughout the summer, tailing off. We have a dip down and we dip back up again. And we predicted this. We've been predicting this for weeks and weeks. So the number of listings there, Toby, is looking quite healthy. Is it what you've been experiencing in your network? And again, any comments on the listings?
So very interesting, Chris. So the trend is very much what we're seeing across the board. Slightly surprised by the sharp upturn. There'll be a couple of factors involved in that, and that will be the tulip philosophy. They're be coming up now, even though we're probably sitting, as we're recording this, in some biblical weather. I certainly am. Secondly, again, this is the return to school. So for me, this is the moving time, Chris. So am I surprised by that this is the upturn? I'm not, but I am surprised how sharp the upturn is. So, from where it was, for me, this is a trend we're seeing across the board at the moment.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the uplifts, in 2017, the uplift, because the bank holiday weekend was always the same, went from 24 to 32, which again is the yellow line, which is a similar lump up. In 2018, it went from 30 to 36, which is a 20% uplift. In 2019, she went from 27 to 32, which is more of a 15 to 20% uplift. In 2023, it went from 26 or 27 up to 34. And week 35, this is for this year, 29,000 up to 38,600. So it is at the upper end of the range, but it is expected. Now, we will be coming on later in a few minutes when we're talking about the average price, because the bit that's is this, that the average price of a property coming onto the market this week is £482,000. Last week, the price was, let me just pull this up, 412,000, and the week before that, 407. So we have had a absolutely massive uplift in the average asking prices of the properties that have been coming on. Again, that has been being predicted for weeks. We'll come to that part in the show. So the UK property market has not let us down in terms of its expectation. Ladies and gentlemen, the UK property market is boring as hell. It's steady as she goes. Unless we have a black swan event like we had in 2020, she just carries on boring, steady, Groundhog Day sort of stuff. But we'll come on to that massive uplift in a second, okay? Let's move on and look at price changes, and the average price of a property being changed is £430,000, which again is quite high compared to other years. And the number of price reductions is 25,878, which means that we are reducing on average 1 in 6.5 properties at the moment, which is around 15–16%, which is actually the UK long-term average. On average, we reduce around 15% of our stock per month. Is reducing 1 in 6 properties a month enough when, and this is Toby, I ask this question most weeks, when we, as a country, we only exchange contracts on 53% of the properties we list?
I think it's going to depend. So bearing in mind, Chris, we're now very much post-election. That's hit and that's landed. I think in 1 in 6, for me, is it enough? It very much depends on the motivation now of the vendors within that sector. Do they want to move for Christmas? Is it a 2024 move? And that will hit the price reductions more. If anything, I thought there would have been more towards 1 in 4, 1 in 5. But again, it's the motivation at this particular time of the year. As you said, the year has flown by, but how many people do we have saying, I have to make that move for Christmas? Interest rates are in my favour. So I think 1 in 6 doesn't surprise me. I would anticipate that ratio will probably go down slightly.
Okay, well, let's hope so, because again, ladies and gentlemen, if you are only being paid as an estate agent, if you're only being paid on roughly 1 in 2 of the homes that you put on the market, you're wasting the vendor's time and you're wasting your time. Okay. Again, I'm quite vocal in the industry talking about overvaluing, and there's nothing wrong with overvaluing if it's ethical overvaluing, where you actually say to the vendor, I think it's worth 300, but let's put it on at 330. I will book an appointment to come and see you in 4 weeks' time, and we'll do all the great photographs. And if we still haven't sold it, we'll reduce it then. That is ethical overvaluing, that you've been honest with the vendor from day one, and you're booking something in, and you as the valuer are taking responsibility. What really grinds my gears is valuers, pretty boy, pretty girl valuers, go and put homes on the market and then absolve all responsibility of chasing the vendors, leaving it for little floss, to get price reductions. What is fascinating is I've just been looking on Zoopla this morning for Grantham, and on Zoopla there's 257 properties that have been reduced. 257 properties that are available for sale in the town of Grantham, and Grantham's just a boring little market town in Lincolnshire. The thing is, though, that over 110 properties have been reduced, and the average reduction is 5.9%. Which is scary. I would have, it scares me. And that's the average. There's stuff at 10, 15, 20%. Scary as hell. Okay, so interestingly, let's move on. This is again a new graph. So how many homes are we actually selling? So we're now moving on to sales. How many homes are we actually selling? And at the moment, as I said, we are moving approximately 1 in 6 of our stock at the moment. So it's around 15–16%. This is a graph which will appear every week, but only changes every month. So you can see here back in 2021, 2022, then we were moving our sales through at around 1 in 3 of our stock levels. I know it felt like we were selling everything, but actually we weren't. And again, that often surprises a lot of agents. I can remember we had nothing to sell. You did have stuff to sell. It was just probably overvalued. But again, the long-term average is around 15–16%. Now, and this is a great graph. Interestingly, and I know you know this, Toby, but some people might not, my daytime job is I create content for local estate agents for them to publish. And I've produced this for local estate agents with local stats. And and interestingly, there isn't much difference around the country. There's a slightly like a tide move, some up down south are slightly lower and some up north are a bit slightly higher. But it does work. Interestingly, again, notice here that there's always these Christmas dips, so that we all know that properties don't sell as much in the winter. But again, your sale through rate. So this is the percentage of homes that you're selling from your existing stock of properties. So the happy months are around the spring, spring and summer months, and the bad months are in the winter months. And again, I know you know this, but it's always nice to see this. And again, this is just another graph. This is a new graph, ladies and gentlemen. This is a new graph that you've actually was shown this week, and that basically shows you the number of UK residential sales agreed as a percentage of listings. So that's the red line overlaid with the number of total listings. And again, that just shows you that whilst the number of listings is pretty stable, going up and down, between the months, the percentage of listings that you're selling, which is the red line highlighted with yellow, is dropping. So do be aware. We do mention it. We do a standalone graph on this. I'll just show it to you now, Toby. And this is gross sales as a percentage of listings. That's a standalone week. But this is a new graph which shows the graph. Let me just put it back. There we go. It's all good fun here, mate. Let's just put that's it. That is that graph, just shown it in a time series back to 2019. Let's move on and look at the gross sales. And again, the number of properties sold this week is uplifted. We've sold this week 25,303 properties compared to last week's of 21,500, and the week before 25,300, and the week before 24,800, the week before that 24,800, and that can be seen on this graph here. The white line is 2024, and we're comparing 17, 18, 19, and 23. And again, just remind you, ladies and gentlemen, the graphs are all available to download free of charge. If you listen to this on the podcast, you can download them in a link that is available on the write-up, and also if you're watching this on YouTube, the link is also available there as well. What I do say is this: you can use them internally, you can use them on your free valuation market appraisals, but I do ask that you do not publish them on social media, because my clients who I ghostwrite local articles for use these as a national stat as well in some of their content to make them look good as well. So please do not use them on social media, but please do use them in the valuations to make yourself look good. So, and again, I'll just finish off with the number of listings, then we'll come back to Toby because he knows his onions. Year to date, we are, let me just pull that up, on 888,565 properties, which is 12.8% ahead of last year to date, and 7% ahead of 17, 18, or 19. The average price of a property sold, so this is the asking price of when she went sold with the contract, £355,000. Let's just remind ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, the average price of a property coming on the market, 482. Bit of a gap there. Come back to that in a second. And there is the fabled dip down of bank holiday. Right. I've been rambling on too much about sales, mate. What's your thoughts on gross sales?
So again, I think this is the age-old adage, Chris. You could talk a lot today about, is the market saturated? What's that doing to fees in terms of the number of listings on the market? We can talk around price reduction, etc. But just from the raw stats, really clear. And when I look at these graphs, I do ignore 20 and 21 for the obvious reasons, and obviously the bounce, stamp duty, etc., which sometimes will sort of overcloud. But when I look at them, if I look at 17 compared to 24, we're seeing an increase across that in terms of the number of sales. But again, in the same volume, we're seeing that the listings that have grown. So for me, the more listings on the market, clearly, very obvious thing to say, we will see more homes sold. However, the percentage of homes being sold hasn't kicked on as much.
That's interesting, because this graph shows, this is a brand new graph which are being introduced to the show this week. So this graph here, the blue bars show the number of properties for sale in the UK, and the red line highlighted in yellow are the number of sale agreeds. Okay, so therefore, look, we had 350,000 properties for sale in about 2 and a bit years ago. At the moment, we've got, so there's not, we've doubled our stock, okay, albeit from a low figure, but we haven't doubled our sales. So if we actually applied, this is again a new graph, if we applied the percentage of UK homes sold in the month against the number of homes available to buy. So we're not, the previous graph I showed you 2 minutes ago was sales against listings. This is sales against stock. Okay. And you can see here, as I said, we were selling around the 30% mark. but now, as I said, we're dropped down to this one here. So that again, just a nice graph to show you that stock has doubled, sales going through has not doubled at all. And in terms of the percentage, as I said, we're around that 15% mark. Interestingly,
It should have grown, Chris.
so again, it should
The
have
15% market it's flatlined over the last 7 years. There's a number of factors that people will be looking at, but just from the flat, if you think about there is options, so it just tells me now that the market, and we're seeing this, isn't the supply and demand, but if it comes on and it's managed and it's at the right price, it is selling. But again, there is option on the market. I think that the last thing I would say on this side, if you look at how we've hopefully brought around technology, the skill of the industry over the last 7 years, the learnings we've had across COVID, you'd expect that figure to have grown at least to around about 20%, which then would make this a record year for most agents, because you've got the most stock you've seen in 7 years, but also it's surprising we've stagnated in terms of the percentage sales. That in itself just means the practice that's going on out there isn't effective when there's more option in the marketplace.
You are so right there, Toby. So right. Now, again, this is a graph. We talked about this a few minutes ago. We talked about the average listing price versus the average sale agreed asking price. So we don't know what they sold for, but that doesn't really matter, because Hamptons do a report every single month since 2007, and they compare average asking prices versus prices achieved, and that number is really tight. It doesn't hardly change at all. So really, tracking the average asking price is a damn good indicator. Is there something there that screams at you that looks strange? And we're thinking more off to the right here.
The complete variance, Chris.
Look at that. That's in 1 week.
Complete variance, and it's sharp, and that just jumps off the page, Chris. Very similar to what we saw earlier on. In the old weeks. Yeah, it's almost
that is the same week a year ago. So we've been predicting this for a few weeks. This is central London. Okay.
Wow.
So what happened? And again, I've gone in and looked at the stats. What happens is this: in the UK, outside London, August is just a normal month. It's not, but in London, it looks like everyone goes on holiday. And I've been predicting this for a few weeks. See, what's happened is this: last week in September, nearly 45% of the properties that you would expect in a normal month came on in a week. And because they're 1 million, 1.5 million, and 2 millions, it really does screw up the averages.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I suspect, as I said, look, this is May, June, July, August in 2023. This is May, June, July, August in 24. Look, she dips up, she drops down, she dips up, and this is just, as I said, this is just London, and I suspect that she'll dip down again like she did last time. So, just be aware of that. And again, we'll just put that on a graph, and you can see this is what we had in the same week last year, because again, week 36 always seems to be August bank holiday. And the average reduction, as I said, so the gap, as I said, is 35%. It's big. The long-term average is about 17%. So you can see here that quite obviously London had a huge effect here, because normally these figures here in 17, 18 or 19, even though they're not on that graph, are normally around the mid-teens. So London, you all go on holiday and then you come back from Provence, put your home on the market. There you go. That's the effect. That is the difference that London makes. Absolutely massive.
London will always move the dial in any market, good or bad. But what's interesting on that graph, Chris, is the bounce of 2021 in London wasn't as severe as we probably saw outside of London. So 23.7 isn't as sharp when you look at what went on in 21. Probably the best market we've seen in 15 years, compared now to what we're seeing in 2024.
You're absolutely right. One of as I said before, I write articles, and what we've done, what we did a couple of weeks ago is we took the average number of sales in a town for the last 5.5 years. Okay, so we worked out what the average number of sales is per month, and then applied what exactly were the sales in that particular month and compared. And what you found was this: is that outside London, that you had a huge huge dip, obviously for COVID. Okay, and then what happened was that London's just been kind of just being a bit boring. It's, it went up in COVID, but a post lockdown, and then she dipped down a bit when we had because remember in 22, 23 we've had two big nasty things. One was the trust budget in late 22, and one was interest rates biting in 23. And again, in London, those were quite tepid, whilst in the rest of the UK, massive drop on lockdown, massive boost afterwards, massive drop with the trusts, massive drop with the interest rates. And then since the new year, in the outside London, it's been all sweetness and roses. Whilst in London, it's just been a little bit tempered. So again, the London market, completely weird. Anything on this before we go and look at sales pipelines and fall throughs?
No, I would just two comments, Chris. For me, I think you're absolutely right in your observations there. And if you look probably into as far down as the Cornish market, as far back as 17, the craving for outside space, it was really ticking up. But in 21, it took a rocket boost through that. And again, even now, it's seen a sharp decline.
I'm hearing, I've got some people in Cornwall, and they are finding it really hard work at the
It
moment.
flooded. But in 21, the clambering to get that garden, balcony, etc., was massive. And I think the other comment I'd say, which the graph doesn't show, is it's interesting what we're seeing in the London market at the moment. Is something I've not seen for a little while, is the challenge around flats and leasehold properties. They are certainly sticking on the market. And the real feedback that I'm getting from the field is that if we're taking on something freehold, it is selling. We are certainly seeing a great penetration in there. Flats that we would have put on 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago that would have left the shelves very quickly, they are hanging about, Chris. So there is a big error there. There is a big challenge there around the flat market in London.
It's interesting. I did some analysis on the top 5 estate agents over the last 5 years. What you tend to find is that the likes of your Foxtons, their specialisation is 1 to 2 beds, which by its very nature are going to be apartments. And they're probably shifting, in terms of what they list to what they sell, they're probably shifting mid-late 20%. So they're only exchanging on 25, 30% of what they put on the market. Whilst Kinleys and Winkworths, they tend to specialise more in 3 and 2 beds, and again more houses than apartments, because you don't get many 3-bedroom apartments. And Kinleys and Winkworths tend to be shifting more like 40 to 50% of the properties they're moving. So again, it just shows you is that as an estate agent, you've got to be you've got to niche down until it hurts. And if your niche is 1-bedroom apartments and they're in London, and you've got all those awful issues with regard to Grenfell and the cladding and everything else like that, it might be time for you to pivot the way you do your marketing and track your ideal client.
And the figures you're saying, Chris, are absolutely what we're seeing in the field. Part of the 1 to 2 bedroom challenges is the investor market, or the lack of the investor market at the moment. That's certainly now. So those 1 and 2 beds that would have gone to an investor route are definitely going to owner occupier. So that is slowing that rate up. And as you're quite rightly saying, that next tranche of 2 to 3s will be shifting quicker, which is just what's happening. So it's their owner occupier, everything that's around first-time buyers, deposits, etc. But we are seeing the effect of investors not buying at anywhere near the same rate.
I mean, interestingly, I produced a graph, and the rental market is actually, net figures are still growing.
Yes.
But it's not growing. I sent that to you, didn't I? But it's not growing. It is more tread water. It is legally growing. The numbers have grown. I think it's in the last 4 years, 180,000, 170,000. But when we're dealing with 4.5, 5 million properties over 4 years, that's not great. But I think the big thing about rentals that scares me for agents is the onslaught of on open rent, in the fact that, you know, in 2023 they had 15% of the market, and the second to have an agency the same size as open rent, you would need to have taken the 14th or number 2 all the way down to 15 or 16 and combine them together. You know, firms like, you know, Martin and Co, like you guys, Belvoir, Leaders, Foxtons, Kinleys, Dexter's, added all of those up, all the Connells, Sequence, William H. Brown, added all those rental books up to make the same size as open rent. And remember, this is the scary, scary fact, and a big thing for letting agents out there, ladies and gentlemen, is that 52% of the properties that open rent had on the market for the first time in 2023, the previous time that property had been on the market for rent had been through a high street agent.
It's a big figure, Chris.
That is scary as hell. And I think, you know, everyone was running around like headless chickens when the Bruces were around with purple bricks. Well, I think the big problem is open rent. And if you're not, what are you doing, ladies and gentlemen? What are you doing in your lettings department to ensure that the landlords don't up sticks? You know, it looks cheap, it looks easy to do, doesn't it? But I don't think we tell our landlords what we actually do for our money, because they just think it's whack it on Rightmove, and it's cheap. And let's be honest, open rent is cheap as chips until things go wrong. And I think we need to actually educate our clients on what could go wrong and why we're there.
Until we get some big legislation changes, Chris, I think watch this space.
Indeed, indeed. Right, let's get back to the stats, okay? Because that's what we're here. That's what we're here for. The ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to hear us talking too much. Net sales. So net sales are the number of gross sales this week less the number of fall throughs. Okay. Actually, hold on a second. We're not doing gross sales. We're doing fall throughs. What we like, getting ahead of ourselves. So the fall through rate at the moment, we are losing around 5 or 6% of the properties that in our pipeline each month. That's a newish graph, but again, it just shows you. Number of fall throughs this week jumped up to 6,963, although we did have a big drop last week because of the bank holiday. So again, that was expected. But as I said, that looks scary as hell, and that graph is for the doomongers out there. But if we actually look at it, it isn't that bad at all. It's just that we've got bigger sales pipelines. We'll come on to sales pipelines in a second. The percentage of fall throughs on a standalone basis this week, 27.5, which is again a little bit higher than I'd hope. But again, let's just remind ourselves here, ladies and gentlemen, it was a post bank holiday week. So again, that is going to happen. It's happened in all these last few years as well. And as I said, number of fall throughs 6,963. Anything on fall throughs that concern you, or does it look all right, just as you expect?
As I expected, Chris. I know we said that the number this week's a bit higher. I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a bounce back, a bit of a delay from the bank holiday, but that's about in line, Chris.
Good stuff. Right, let's go through to net sales. We did get ahead of ourselves slightly there, ladies and gentlemen. So net sales is gross sales less fall throughs of the week. The white line is 2024. And again, in stark relief there, isn't it interesting that even though this week, as I said, I might not feel good at 18,340, if we compare ourselves to week 36 of 2023, it was 14,252. But again, the killer one is this. Look at that. The 2020 is, you know, in 2022, we were just about kicking in our, let's just pull that up. Hold on a second. Here we go. Net sales. Here we go. Yeah, oh, sorry. Hold on. Let's get back to that. Hold on. You know, I don't think we're a professional outfit here, Toby?
We give the impression.
We give the impression. It doesn't. I don't think it is that. You know, the number of net sales. You know, is. You know, we're about to hit. You know, this is again. Just look at that blue line there. So the budget hadn't kicked in yet of 22, which is the turquoise line. Look at the difference there. But again, we're still streets ahead of the pink line, which is 2023. You know, to say that we are 20. You know, give you an idea here, ladies and gentlemen. This week we're on 18,340, and in 2023 it was 14,200. So, that's not bad, is it? I was accused.
Supply, Chris.
I was accused on Property Industry Eye, and again, you've not made it unless you got a troll, of saying you always look at good news. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just telling you what the news is. And what is particularly interesting, Toby, is that quite often someone might have a comment on social media saying, I'm finding my market really tough. And when you actually dive in and look at the stats of that town, what you often find is this: the market's doing okay, they're just having a rubbish month. But isn't it
And that's
interesting?
it, Chris. And that will be what it boils down to, because you've just got to go back to what we said at the start of the show today, was if you just look at the supply numbers, compare them with 2021, that will push net sales up. Even if you're not quite on your game, the law of averages are you've got that much more to go at. So that will be a big factor. The other thing with net sales as well, with that supply, we will see more chains being closed. We'll see more vendors finding, because there is more availability. So I would expect, if we were doing this in a couple of weeks' time, I would be saying we should be really nudging and overtaking 2021 because of the difference in the supply between those years.
I think 21 is probably a bit optimistic, but we are definitely going to overtake 22, because in 2022, if we wait for the trust budget, which kicks in, the fallout from the trust budget kicked in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, in terms of weeks of the month, then we will overtake 22, because 22 stalled. It grew, but it wasn't a particularly great rate. Whether we go on as to 21, I just think that's a tad optimistic, but I do think we'll catch up 22 by the end of the year, mate. But I think we'll end up around 1.15, possibly one. Whether we hit 1.2, I don't know, by the end of the year. And you could say, well, do remember though, ladies and gentlemen, these stats are just second hand, so we've got to add on the new home stuff on top. But I think we'll end up with the second-hand stock of just under 1 million, and then the new homes will add it up to about 1.15 to 2. Anything on net sales before we move on?
No, I think that the next few weeks we're certainly seeing some record net sales at the moment, Chris, in the field, and I do think if we look at just on that supply number, I'm slightly more optimistic than you are in terms of what the end of the year is going to bring. So I think it's all about that supply number. Even if the percentage stays stagnant, I remain slightly more optimistic on that.
Well, it's quite often, I'm normally the optimistic one, so it's quite nice not to be the optimistic one. Okay, good stuff. Just a couple more graphs, ladies and gentlemen, before we go to sunny Ipswich. This graph here shows you the number of properties that are currently for sale. And this was we always do, we close the book on the end of the month. So the yellow lines are what the number of properties that were for sale on the 31st of August every single month. So we finished on 710 by back end of August 24, and we finished on 646 at the back end of August 23. And you can see that, just to give you an idea. So you might say, well, there's a big jump in number of properties for sale. Let's remind ourselves, Toby, when you had hair and mine was black, when we were boys, the number of properties for sale in 2008 at the same time of year was about 1.2 to 1.3 million. So that is what actually caused the prices to drop. Not what, everyone dumped their houses on the market, and we all know when there's too much supply and then demand was curtailed because of the credit crunch, people found it hard to get mortgages. Classic economics: when you have curtailed demand and increased supply, prices go down. So, and again, a massive tip for you, all you new estate agents or negotiators watching this, great way to do that is just look at, go to Rightmove every month and just do the whole town, do it on semis, do it on terrace, and just say, right, how many properties are for sale? That's the first thing you find out, available stock. The second one is how many properties are sold subject to contract. So you tick the box and then take the one from the other. And then the number 3 is do a percentage of the sold against available, and just track those numbers, and you can soon find out if there's a type of property that's lagging behind, so if all of a sudden a lot more four beds come on the market and not as many of them are selling, you don't really want to be targeting four beds to get them on the market. But if all the 3-bedroom semis are selling out like proverbial hot sausage rolls, then you want to be targeting your 3-bedroom hot sausage rolls. Oh, I could just do with a warm sausage roll.
Lovely.
There you go. We showed you this week, ladies and gentlemen. This is the average price achieved on properties coming onto the market, and property, that's the red line. The orange line is the pound per square foot at sold subject to contract levels, and the greeny line is the average pound per square foot at exchange. The important line here is the orange line, ladies and gentlemen, because that matches the land registry in 5 or 6 months' time with an accuracy rate of 92%. So if you want to know what's happening to house prices, follow the average pound per square foot at sale agreed. We've had a slight dip in the last couple of months, but generally it's okay. But if you want to foretell the top of the market or a bottom of the market, follow the pound per square foot at sale agreed. Big tip for you. Okay, Toby, that's the end of the first part of the show. Is there anything that you want to discuss before we go to the beautiful city of Ipswich?
No, my only closing thoughts, Chris, is I think we're in a very, very good market at the moment with rates, with supply. Supply's not run away with itself. So I do think over the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, I do think we'll see a very busy market, and the opportunities fantastic out there at the moment, Chris.
Excellent. Well, at that, we will now move on to the second part of the show, where we go to the beautiful city of Ipswich. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a platform called Insight. Insight is from a firm called 20EA. 20EA have different platforms and that do different things. We are specifically looking at the Insight platform. I must stress to you that the 20EA have not paid me or given me any consideration for mentioning this platform. It's just I'm a bit of a hashtag fanboy, and we've come to an arrangement where I use this in the show at no cost, but mention it. And if you want to have this level of data on your town, you can have this. They do packages for towns, packages for regions, and then they do packages for the whole of the UK. I'm an absolute massive fan of it. I think you have it as well, Toby, don't you?
We do indeed. It's an absolute Bible, Chris.
And it's independent third-party data, it's gold standard data, it's absolutely marvelous. And you can have access to this if you contact them. So again, please do not mention my name. I'm not on commission. But let's dive in. So let's crack on. So just for the benefit of everyone, we are looking at Ipswich, and we are looking at the postcodes of IP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so that is Ipswich core and Ipswich villages. Okay, which primarily do tend to go to Ipswich estate agents. Okay. The reason I've done the villages as well is that there's a nice country market. We'll be looking at the upper quartile, and it's only fair that we look at those for the ladies and gentlemen agents out there who are in the upper quartile. So we're going to start off with new instructions, Toby, and we'll have a look and just see where everything is. So we are looking at between the 1st of January 2019. If you're watching this on a phone, don't bother. Get to a big screen and watch it, because otherwise you won't get to see any of this, okay? We're looking at the 1st of January 2019 all the way through to the 10th of September 2024. This is residential sales, and we're looking at new instructions. The average price of a property that's come onto the market is £297,311 over the last 5.5 years. 28,466 properties have come on the market with an average pound per square foot of 288 over the last 5 years. And the wonderful thing about the 20EA Insights platform is you can change this and change the month, and you can judge things of what's happening in the property market. What we'll do is we'll start at the top and we'll work down and just see which agents seem to be pulling the trees up when it comes to new instructions. Now, again, new instructions aren't everything, but as we all know, Toby, you can't sell it unless you got it.
Yeah, key. It's a lifeblood.
Okay, so first we're going to kick off with Palmer and Partners. What is particularly interesting here is this, what's screaming at me is that it appears that February, again, can't get my mic, December's, isn't that interesting? Every one of their Decembers seems to be a really low month and then a big spike in January. So I'm just wondering here, we're not talking to Palmer and Partners here, I'm just wondering here, there's a bit of a pattern going on there, is that they hold back their listings for a January push through, which is
Very much. And I think we'll probably see that in certainly the top three agents here. They've got the Boxing Day launches that they're holding on for. So there's a definite trend, Chris, and it's showing that it's a busy market in January. But I think without knowing this particular business very well, I think that's slightly artificial. And I think though that's a massive drive, probably around the Boxing Day campaign.
well, I think, well, again, if that was Boxing Day, which William H. Brown are part of the Connell Sequence Group. I'll tell you what, if you could just have a quick look online and just see if Palmer and Partners are, I believe they are an independent agent.
They are independent, yeah.
They are independent. Okay, let's just have a quick look. William H. Brown, and again, I'm predicting here that their spikes, because they're part of Connell Sequence, are going to be in December. Let's have a quick look. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
There it is. Yeah, there is the Connell Sequence December spike. Okay, so obviously, well, I say obviously, William H. Brown have the Boxing Day launch, and Palmer and Partners have January launch.
Yeah.
Okay,
Slightly after. Yeah, so they're booming. They're saying we're not going to bother people on Boxing Day. I don't know when the numbers could be taken from, whether it's the 28th, 29th, but
well, it's the first. So they're obviously launching on January the 1st or January the 2nd.
So they're hitting the ground running, Chris, every new year.
Interesting. Let's go and have a quick look at Fenright. Actually, let's just have a quick look. Let's look at trends, okay? Because we're looking at the trends. Are they growing their market share, and that's screaming at me that their market share is pretty stagnant, which is nothing wrong with that. That's quite normal. That is interesting that this is I think this will be the 76th, 77th show we've done. And what you tend to find is this: most agents don't grow their market share, they lose it, they just stay in their lane.
Very flat, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of spikes. You've almost got to mentally put a trend line in there. Yeah. So let's go and look at Fenright, who I believe are an independent agent.
They are, yes.
Okay. So it looks like they've had a slight drifted downwards from 19 to 20, 21, around the 7 or 8% mark. But it looks like they've had a really good August. And okay, we're only 10 days into September. They've had an even better September. So again, who knows? That could just continue on. I know we had some big spikes there, but well done to Fenright for a cracking August. And so far a really good September.
Very much so.
But again, 2 months doesn't make a trend. You've got to be putting their work in. So I'll be interested in what they're doing. Are they doing something different with their marketing? Are they doing something different with their fees? Be interested to see. Let's just keep going down. So William H. Brown, that's a steady growth, isn't it?
Very, again, throughout probably the most steadiest consistent growth, Chris, we've seen out the top three. And again, it's interesting when you look at Fenright, that could just be something as simple as a valuer change, new valuer in, might be something like that. But when you look at William H. Brown's, very, very consistent. We've seen the spikes that they see, but again, nothing.
Spike really is that though, is it? That's all over the place. Well, it's William H. Brown. That's nice and steady. So, and again, nice one, guys. I don't believe that in terms of if you compared Connell Sequence nationally, the last 12 months compared to say the 2019, primarily they've treaded water in terms of market share. Interestingly, the top 25%, most have actually slipped. Not much, but most have slipped. There's been a couple of names that have slipped big time, but most have just slipped. Connell Sequence have treaded water as a group. Some of them have done really well, some of them not, but generally. So I just want to say a big well done to William H. Brown Interesting, I'm a big fan of William H. Brown. It's where I met my wife. There you go.
Ah,
Working there.
there's
There
a,
you go.
you'll know, Chris, that that particular part of the world's got some very talented people in it. Yeah, and again, that's a real stronghold around Ipswich, moving into Suffolk, Norwich, etc. So that doesn't surprise me in terms of where they are and have been there consistently for 5 years. So certainly, if anything, they're probably showing a bit of a signs of a tick up, maximising a little bit on the supply there.
Excellent. Well done, guys. Right, let's go, guys and girls. Hamilton Smith. Again, just that they had a looks like they had a better 19 and 20, but I've been just hovering around that 5% mark. Let's go to Foxhalls.
Yeah, they came back from COVID early, Chris, I think.
There
Uh,
you go.
Hamilton Smith.
Look now, look at this. This is really good. Look at this. So again, we're looking at the stats here. We'll just look at the last 12, 18 months just to see, but all of a sudden, Foxhalls which looked like they opened up might have been a bit earlier. They're doing really well. I'm really impressed with you, Foxhalls. So well done. Let's go to Hart. So it looks like, again, it's a shame we can't go any further back than Jan 19. They've been hovering around that 4 or 5% mark. Let's go to Marks
Just
and
on Chris, just on Hart, there's a huge change. Something's happened between the dizzy heights of 19, where the double figure market share, to obviously where it's dropped back down. So it'd be interesting just to find why that is. All the way back from 19, between 20, COVID looked very challenging for them, but also the bounce back after COVID, it isn't as it doesn't spike as much as the other brands in that town.
No, I mean, one thing whilst you were saying that, I just had a quick look on the internet. There are, Hart did actually cull a number of offices around the COVID time. And often what tends to find is the market share did drop after that. But no, I can see here they are prime and central in Ipswich. So there just seems to be a slight drifting off there. Again, we're not criticizing, ladies and gentlemen, just mentioning the stats, okay? Let's go to Marks and Man. Very similar to Hart, actually. They had a better 19, and then I've just been poodling along quite nicely at 4%.
Very steady.
Alswick Berry. Okay, I mean, again, they're going to be a bit more, the lower the numbers, the more spiky these are going to be, ladies and gentlemen. But again, everyone seems to be staying in their lane. Connells, very similar to William H. Brown, slight growth there, not much, but trend line slight upwards. Beagle Property, love that name. Again, a slight growth, not much, but slight. Your Ipswich, love that name.
That's a good name, isn't it? Your Ipswich.
Keystone, we'll go down to number 20. Purple Bricks, a slight drifting downwards, even though nationally they're actually growing.
Nationally, obviously in that particular town, you've got the likes of William H. Brown, Hart, some good independents. So that'll be a fierce market, Chris, if you've not got the right person in that town.
Yopa, nice and steady around the 2% mark. Grace Estate Agents. Leaders, which probably was a takeover because I know Leaders weren't initially from that part of the world. Let's go to Joseph Property. Oh, well done, guys. You're growing nicely. Nicholas, Abbott's. I believe Abbott's are part of the Connells Countrywide group. Okay. Again, very spiky, like we said. And Belvoir there. We'll go down to 25, just because some people might want to be watching this. There you go. That's Blake and Mayhew. No, Town and Country, sorry, my apologies. That's Blake and Mayhew, Ascot's, Jackson's, and Resolute. We'll just move the dates to the last 18 months, just to give a
strong agents in that list, Chris. Very good agents. All the way through.
I'm impressed. So let's just have a quick look who the moves and shakers are. So William H. Brown, we've got some graphs coming up. It'll take a little while to come in. There we go. So these are the graphs now. So instead of looking at the last 5 years, we're looking at the last 18 months just to give a flavor. So, and that will also allow the more fighter brands that have only been around recently a chance to shine in their lights. So William H. Brown, well, we said they were growing, and that's really good, wasn't it? Because isn't it interesting? In the previous list, Palmer and Partners were number 1. So Palmer and Partners were number 1 over the last 5.5 years, but over the last year and a half, William H. Brown, although there's with respect, there's not much difference between the two. Palmer and Partners, again, a slight drift. We did say that, but again, more it's quite stark when you actually read it like this. Fenrights, we said that there was an uplift there. Let's see if there's any. Well, I don't think Ostwick Berry came in the last one, so we'll just have a look at that one. Or Joseph Properties. Go and look at Oakhart. Okay. Looks like you had a good few months there, but leveled off in 24. Yeah, okay. Again, not much here. I don't know if Marks and Man were in the list last time. Yeah, I think they were. Again, when you get so involved with the names, it's unbelievable. Okay, that's that. Right. While I just bring this back, Toby, I'm gonna look at the upper quartile in a second. There's nothing really there that's screaming. Not, it's just a traditional UK regional centre property market. Okay, let's go look at the upper quartile. So let's go and have a look. So here we go. Oh, it's not much over £1 million, mate. Here we go. Let's go 750. Okay, so we're going 750 upwards, which is not necessarily upper quartile, because remember there were 22,000 properties came on the market. So if it was upper quartile, it'd be the top 5,000. We'll just have a look and see what that is, just for what's name of giggles.
Interesting change there. Fenright still staying there, Chris, at the upper end, but then you've got some movers in. You've got your Savills, Fine and Countries, Jackson Stops, and again that probably shows, those who are fishing in that pond. The core Ipswich market is obviously below that bracket where the volume is.
What is really interesting here, and the thing that really excites me. Okay, we're going to go million plus. Okay, and no, actually no, that's too. I'm going to go 750. That's posh. Okay, right. This has only ever happened once before in the UK, and that was in Exeter, where the but actually, hold on, Fenright weren't number one, were they? It was
no, they were third. They were third.
Right, so therefore this hasn't changed. There is only one location in the UK where the dominant volume agent for all the market is also the same agent who is the number one in the posh upper quartile or whatever, quintile or whatever. And I just thought, sorry, Fenright were number 2, number 3, depending on where you're looking. So Fenright, they look like they and beating the likes of Savills and Jackson Stops and Fine and Country, well done. I'm big round of applause to Fenright on that one. Yeah, just really interesting to see. We'll just have a quick look, because I know you guys will want to look at your graphs, because I know you agents like measuring things against other things. There we go. We'll do the top 10. Again, the numbers are so small, ladies and gentlemen. So quite frankly, you've got to take it with a slight pinch of salt. You just got to look at more the long-term stuff.
It's interesting, Chris, at that upper end. I've only experienced it once in my career, which was an agent in Truro, Lillicrap and Chilcot, and they were the upper end, million plus, 750 plus back in those days. But they were also market leaders consistently over a 2 or 3 year period, and I've never seen that again.
There you go. So you've seen one, I've seen one, and I do one of these shows every week and have done since January 23. It is really, really rare. That's why a lot of people go for your likes of your Fine and Country, which you're buying in a brand. There are other things like By Design and other posh brands are out there. Okay, we're looking at sales. Let's go and move on and look at stock levels. And I just think it's just good to see what the sort of stock levels there are. And you can see here on the graph here that the number of properties for sale at the moment is 2,152, which is, again, when you look at, I'm just looking here, but, there was 1,065 properties for sale in 2021. So there's been a doubling of the number of properties for sale. So that's a great stat when you're saying to, Mrs. Miggins, are you aware that there are in greater Ipswich, the number of properties for sale in 2021 was 1,065, and today it's 2,151, which means you need to be realistically priced. And again, for those of you, I know you know this stat, but some of the people that not watch this is this. If a this has been verified by 20EA. If a property takes less than 25 days to sale agreed from new instruction, the chances of that property going through to exchange and completion are 94% with a 4% with a 6% fall through rate. If a property takes in excess of 100 days to achieve a sale, the chances of it exchanging are 54% and the chances of it falling through are 44%. And overpriced properties take longer to sell. So therefore, I ask, and again, we talk about overvaluing all the time, is what's the point in putting a property on the market if you're not going to reduce the price of it? Because, okay, you might get that adrenaline kick of getting the house on the market and beating the competitors. But if you're not going to get paid on it, what's the point? Unless you are an employed estate agent and you get your kicks from listings and you get your bonuses from listings, which again, I think should be banned, but that ain't going to happen. But there you go. Any thoughts on that before we crack on?
No, I think it's interesting to see the volume, real growth in Ipswich. And again, when you look at the top 7 we've got here, seeing Hart taking a bit more share in terms of what's currently on the market, but in terms of the top 4, they're very unchanged. And I think, as you quite rightly say, Chris, it's now the management of that stock that will be the difference as we walk towards the end of the year.
You absolutely bang on, mate. We're all trying to hunt what we haven't got, when in reality we should be looking at what we've got and working that stock. Are you talking to your vendors? Are you having chats? Or are you leaving it to Floss, who's been in the game 18 months, who doesn't know how to make difficult conversations? Again, I will say this time and time again, and I get sagged off on social media, is this: if you put the house on the market, you do the vendor management.
100%. It's a cardinal, but I'm sure we'll have a conversation about that, Chris, in the next few weeks again.
Indeed we will, and I'll be like a broken record banging on about it constantly. Okay, right. This is my favorite screen of everything, and oh my word, there is some groundbreaking stats here which are just screaming at me, just amazing. So here we go. So again, this is the power of this piece of software, ladies and gentlemen, because there's something on here which has just made my mouth. I've never seen this sort of width of difference, and to some agents in this it's amazing, and some of them you kind of need to pull your socks up. Okay, right. Okay, so what we've got here is a spreadsheet, and it's a bit of a geek's heaven spreadsheet. And there's lots of data, and most agents are going to be looking at the new instruction and market share percentages, and most estate agents are going to be looking at the source of the contracts. And again, we can have a quick look at the price changes. And again, isn't it interesting that William H. Brown they are reducing 58.25% of their stock, whilst the average is 46. There are some as low as 33. Marks and Man, well done. Looks like you're putting the properties on at the right price. We will find that out in the next screen, actually. So the price reductions are quite, the average is 46.94. We're looking at between September 23 and September 24, by the way. Fall throughs, okay. William H. Brown at 30%. The average is 23. So William H. Brown have a slightly higher fall through rate. Fenrights have a really low fall through rate at 17. Marks and Man 17. They have a decent fall through rate. Interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, please consider reservation agreements. I don't know. Do you have an opinion on reservation agreements, Toby?
I do. I think they. I do think in the world we live in, I think they'll become more and more just part of the everyday trade, Chris. I'm a big advocate.
And really, ladies and gentlemen, go for one that actually teaches your valuers how to sell it as a USP. And because I think a lot of people have it but don't use it because they see it as a way to get in the way of getting the listing. But if you actually go with the mindset of actually this is going to help me get more listings, it is, your fall through rates. I mean, 23.02 is below the national average of 24.2 over the last 7 or 8 years. But still, William H. Brown at 30, guys, that's a bit on the high side. You'll get fall through rates in single digits. But there are about 5 or 6 firms in the UK that we're not talking about modern method here of auction. This is reservation agreements. If you
Very different.
and if you set it up well and make sure you go to some firms that teach you how to do it, you will have an unfair advantage over your competition. I'm a massive fan. In fact, I'm going to be talking about them. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just making you aware that in October, I'll just pull up the date now. In October, on Tuesday, the 22nd of October at Twickenham, I'm part of the ICG approved gang. The ICG is Innovation Collaboration Group of a number of prop tech firms. And we are inviting estate agents from the UK to come along to Twickenham for the day. And we'll be going to be talking about how tech can change your business with a chap from Ian Preston, who takes a lot to impress me. He's very impressive on how he's used tech and what's called and called blended fees to help his estate agents. It's just groundbreaking stuff. But we're going to be talking about reservation agreements in the afternoon. I guarantee there'll be no pitching from me or the speakers, and you'll learn lots from that.
Chris, sorry, just to one thing that's really jumping out on the page for me, and I think you mentioned it earlier, but we didn't mention this agent in the market share, is Foxhalls. So if you look at Foxhall here, they really buck the trend in terms of their percentage SSTC to their exchange number.
We're coming on to the exchanges now, so
they're miles ahead.
Yeah, they're amazing, and I wanted to save the best to the end on this graph. Okay, what I'd like you to do, ladies and gentlemen, is just look at these 4 columns here, which is exchanged and withdrawn. I want you to totally ignore everything else. Okay. And just to give you an idea, in the postcodes mentioned, and again, you can all do this at home when you're doing this for yourself, but I know that, hold on, 494 properties have left the books. We're using William H. Brown because they're the one at the top. 494 properties have left William H. Brown's books in the last 12 months, right? Of which 228 have exchanged, and of which 266 have withdrawn, because you add the two together. That's the only way a property will leave an estate agent's booked. She exchanges, she withdraws. So this is, in my humble opinion, the most important stat there is as an estate agent is how many of the properties that you put on the market do you actually exchange, i.e. you get paid and the homeowner gets moved to the next chapter of their life. William H. Brown, for every 10 homes that they put on the market, they will shift 4.6 of them. Fenright, 4.8. Palmer's, 6.2. Foxhalls, 7.3.
Massive.
That is huge difference. I'm trying to rack my brain looking at the top 10 and think of such a wide variance that you have a near double chance. It isn't double, but it's near double chance of, well, let's work it out. Okay, 73.08 divided by, and I'm just picking on William H. Brown because you're at the top and I think personal. If I was Marks and Man, I'd be saying to them, Mrs. Miggins, if you put the house on the market with me, you have a 58.3% greater chance of moving home than you do with that other agent. That's powerful stuff, mate, isn't it?
It's I would never challenge a stat, but I've not seen anything like that, especially when my eyes are drawn, Chris, not only to the sell through rate, but also the withdrawn at 26%, Chris. That's
because again, if you add the two together, they'll make 100%. Okay,
it's remarkable. That's it caught my eye as soon as you flashed on the page, because I've not seen that in any area for a long time. So
Foxhalls are the number one, and then you've got, as I said, William H. Brown at 46, Fenright's at 48, Marks and Man at 48. Again, I think I'm just mixing my words up, but again, you mix my firms up. My apologies there. But again, just looking at those numbers, there's a wide variance. We'll just move down and see if there's anyone screaming. So your Ipswich at 72 is really good. And we're saying Foxhalls at 73. Apologies to Foxhalls when I mentioned Marks and Man. I was mixing my companies up there. But fundamentally, I've just become a big fan of Foxhalls. Interestingly, their market share hasn't grown from the last 12 months to the 12 months before, which are, yeah, although Marks and Man's market share has grown. Yeah, big well done for Foxhalls, isn't it? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
anything else on this before we move on?
I think the only observation, Chris, I'd make, we talk a lot about the cost of losing staff. I think one thing I would look at here when you add up the withdrawal numbers, and I think if you add up the top four, if you just look at the cost of putting the instructions on and the cost of withdrawals, that's a heavy cost that you're facing into when you are, your withdrawal rate is over 50%. You certainly, that's an extra line on the P&L that you probably need to be slightly careful of when you're putting stuff on.
Bang on. This is the upper quartile over 750. Now the numbers are really tight. So so the numbers will be lower. Higher price properties have a lower propensity to sell. So just bear that in mind and take it with a slight pinch of salt, okay? Okay, let's move on and see what agents are getting for their prices. Now this is quite nice. This is nice and tight. Okay, what we got here, ladies and gentlemen? What happens is that 20EA will do an automated valuation model, or like a Valpal figure for every one of your listings, and then we'll look at what you put the house on the market for. So William H. Brown put on 527 homes in the last 12 months, and on average, William H. Brown overvalue, so by approximately 2.25%. Okay, Fen Wright 2.02, Palmer and Partners 2.4, Foxhalls 1.7. Oh, Foxhalls 1.74. Isn't that interesting that they're in the top five, one of the lowest?
Yeah, you have to then go all the way down to sort of Oswick, which we haven't featured yet today, and Hamilton. But then you've got someone like Abbott's at 4%. So again, under that 2% is it really shows how these agents are working, and in a lot of cases really well.
So immediately what's screaming at me is that there's not too much disparity between these. Again, it rings alarm bells when there is disparity between them. So everyone seems to be overvaluing, but overvaluing quite tight. There's no problem with overvaluing. It's then what do you actually achieve from your original asking price? So therefore, William H. Brown will achieve on average 3.18% less than the original asking price. Fen Wright's 3.57, Palmer and Partners 3.31, Foxhalls 3.23, and Marks and Man 3.57. Now, a lot of people don't like percentages, don't get them. Okay, so therefore, what 20EA do is this. They say, right, if everyone put on a £350,000 house, what would you achieve for it? William H. Brown would achieve 346,500, Fen Wright's 344,300, Palmer and Partners 346, Foxhalls 344, 600, and Marks and Man 343, 500. You can see all the numbers there. There's in the top 10, that's nice and tight. But again, if I was Palmer and Partners, I could say, and I was up against Fen Wright, I'd take one against that. So therefore, on average, Palmer and Partners get £879 less than the average Ipswich estate agent, whilst Fen Wright's get £3,045 less than the average agent. Although a lot of that is tempered with the fact is that auction house here are really screwing the numbers up. So we just have to take that with a slight pinch of salt. But what you can say is this, okay? If I was Palmer and Partners, this is what I would be doing. I would be set, so I'm going to put in 3,045 minus 879. So now all of a sudden, if I was Palmer and Partners, I could say, Mrs. Miggins, I know you're going on the market with Fen Wright, which is a great estate agent. I know my fee is £500 more, but here is evidence that I'm going to get £2,166 more than them. You're not criticising, you're just giving them hard facts. So therefore, you're going to say, Mrs. Miggins, you're paying an extra £500 if I do my job, but on average, you're going to get £2,100 more. So really, what do you want to do? Do you want to spend less and you can spend less, but you'll get a hell of a lot less.
Yes.
Or you can spend an extra 500 quid more and get 2,166 more, which nets you out an extra £1,500, which will help you go towards that next home of yours or give money to your kids or whatever. That's where the data, this is This is the power of data, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are, as estate agents, are not necessarily, we're good at selling, we're good at marketing, but we're not very good at looking at data. And this is stuff that I do for my clients, is that we look at the data and then we analyze it and we say, right, this is your what you can do. Anything on that before we look at how quickly the agents are shifting these bad boys?
No, nothing to add, just very powerful data if used in the right way, Chris.
Exactly. So how long does it take for an agent to sell a house? Well, the thing that's screaming at me here is that Fenrights are taking 81 days to find a buyer in the last year. Palmer and Partners are taking 50 days.
Yeah.
Okay. Where's William H. Brown? 58 days. The average in Bristol, Ipswich is 70 days. Let's just look at what it was last year. So this is 70 days is September 23 to September 24. And the last year is September 22 to September 23.
Over 50? Yeah.
Yeah, 54 up to 70. So again, the agents seem to be shifting properties quick is Palmer and Partners and Joseph's. But then we look at the sales progression. The sales progression 149. So this is so it says there SSTC to completion, 106 days. Palmer and Partners 115, Joseph 121, Foxhill's 119, Alswick Berry 115. So looks like nice and tight there. There's no one that seems to be hanging around. Connells and Yopa seem to be taking longer to sell houses, but their sales progression seems to be very similar to everyone else's. Not much there really to chat home about there, mate.
Very much in line, Chris.
Okay, final screen lettings. Not much we can tell here. We'll just have a quick look at what's happened to average rents, and then we'll look at some market shares, ladies and gentlemen, before we go. So the average rent in Ipswich was £718. Yeah, £718 in 2019. We'll do the similar for 23. Let's just go and have a look. There we go. There we go. £953 per calendar month. So a massive difference.
Huge.
Now the magical thing about lettings is that there's a lot less data, and the vast majority of the properties that you are shifting and moving around here are going to be properties that you've already got in the books. But we can get a flavour of what's happening here. So let's go and have a look, and let's look at leaders. Nice and steady growth there, guys. Again, doesn't tell us that our market share is growing. That some of that growth could be because they bought another competitor and have been slowly, and what you tend to find is if you buy a competitor, you drop it into your books, and then when the properties come up for relet, that's when it comes up for new instruction. That's when it's steady growth. So I wonder if leaders have bought someone and that's growing. Again, we're just looking at trends here. Okay, let's go look at Hart. And again, that's really, really good. I've not seen Hart in the top 2 or 3 lettings. Yeah. So again, that's good to see. Let's go and look at open rent. So open rent now is interesting because again, nationally, we've gone from around 4 or 5% up to around 15, 16, 17%. So it looks like open rent has not taken hold in Ipswich as much as it has anywhere else. No. Okay. Nicholas Estates seem to be dropping. William H. Brown. Again.
Very up and down, isn't it?
It is. Okay. I don't know if there's a student market. Normally we get spikes on student properties. Can't remember. There might be a poly or I don't think there's an Ipswich University, is there? It doesn't ring a bell.
There's a polytechnic there, I think.
Or they call them universities nowadays, mate. I think it makes it
I didn't go to either, so I might be too old, Chris.
No, I got a BSc in drinking beer, mate. With honours. Right, Riverdale, Pennington, Belvoir, Palmer's, Ascot's, Alswick, in Fenright. That again, interesting that big player in resi sales, not huge in lettings. Again, a slight drifting off there. Connells, Keystone, Hamilton Smith, Goddard Joseph's, Rent PMS, Martin and Kurt's one of yours.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Property first, we'll go to 25. Abbots, Countrywide, and Northwood. Northwood's not one of yours, is it?
It
I know
is,
it's
yeah.
part of the group, but you're one of your it's
No,
not
but it
responsibility. No,
belongs to Rob Smith, that one.
that's
So
Rob Smith. Good stuff. Who is, ladies and gentlemen, a presenter that's on the show as well. He was here on a few weeks ago, and I met Toby 6 months ago, and I had a good old chat. Met him a month ago, and we decided we'll get him on board. And again, Toby's been interviewed on the Watkin sofa, ladies and gentlemen, and those will be out very, very soon. Before we go to you for your final thoughts, Toby, a message to the agents of Ipswich. My daytime job is that I create content and mentor and guide people on how to attract mostly landlords, actually, even though the market is dropping, how to attract landlords from other agents, but also residential sales as well. And if you are looking for to stand out from the crowd, to help you attract landlords and vendors to give your team a call, then I can only work for one agent per town, and Ipswich is presently available. So if you wanted to have a chat without any obligation, my telephone number is as follows. Feel free to pick up the phone to me, and I can tell you in about 5 minutes what I can do for you as an agent to attract people to you. My name, as I said, Chris Watkin, 07950 147 572, and I can tell you what I do. If you've got enough landlords and vendors and you don't need any help, then just totally ignore this bit. Right, final thoughts, Toby, on what you've seen both in Ipswich and then secondly nationally, and then we'll leave it at that.
So certainly nationally first, Chris, really now seeing, I think, a healthy supply. One of the things that you would want to see now, as we now get towards the end of the year, that sales through rate hold its own, but obviously the supply would probably go backwards, which would knock that up slightly. I think, also what we're seeing, Chris, and it came through in Ipswich, will we now start seeing landlords coming into the sales market? And will we now start seeing any rental increases as we approach potentially some changes in that industry? That may move the figures. In terms of the Ipswich agents, a very consistent 5 years. There hasn't been massive drops off a cliff. The marketplace looks very, very healthy from a house price point of view and a volume point of view. And I think there are some big areas there where, with that consistency, be very interesting to see how fees are looking and how they start to move upwards with the control these agents seem to have, Chris. But lastly, thank you for having me on today, and I hope that's been useful.
It's been very useful. In fact, I'm going to go public on this one. You have passed the audition, and we will be invited back for another show in about 2 or 3 months' time. Your insight is absolutely fantastic. But finally, I'd like to say thank you for the people that have been watching the show. I will be doing this now for about 18 months. Each show takes approximately 5 hours a week of my time to prepare the stats, create the graphs, publish them, do the video, do the editing, and then pushing it out. This will be coming out, this comes out every Friday, so it'll be coming out on Friday, the 13th of September. And as I said, it comes out every Friday on Property Industry Eye. If you've got a location that you want me to look at and we haven't done it before, then please do put it in the comments. If you've got a graph that you think, oh, I wonder what that is against that, give me a shout, put a comment on LinkedIn or put a comment on YouTube. And we'll leave it at that. Final thoughts is this, is just at the end, once the Wizard Graphics kicks in, there is a link to a playlist, ladies and gentlemen. And if you click on that playlist and save the playlist, you get the next week's show in 24 hours in advance, because it uploads the playlist before it goes public. So you get an advanced knowledge of that. So just bear that in mind. Toby, you've been amazing. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Chris.
And thank you for watching the show.